Friends, hi, welcome to day 36. I hope you're well and enjoying the start of a new week. We're now into week 6, so cruising through, and I hope you're enjoying it. Today's readings, let's kick straight into Exodus, and today's readings, also including yesterday's, we see people that need basically to learn to trust God. And so the Israelites, they're free from slavery. They've still got a long journey ahead of them, but they're not slaves anymore. And so today we see that there's lots of ritual being introduced basically to teach them to remember that God was with them and that God rescued them. Because often it can be really easy to forget how God has been there in the past, how God has perhaps provided or kept us safe or delivered us in the past. It's easy over time when things get tough again to forget what God has done in the past. And so check out chapter 13 and look down to verses 17 and 18. We see God led them away, but he didn't take them the shortest route. He took them away from the shortest route and instead directed them a longer route that went through the desert so that they would avoid a war. And often we can easily take the easiest or the quickest solution for anything. Sometimes perhaps without stopping to see if maybe God is trying to take us another way. We often go for a quick fix solution. And sometimes, as in this case, God takes them a longer route, which is longer and it would seem like perhaps a struggle, but ultimately it's for their good. Look down to verses 20 and 22 and we see how God guides the Israelites with a pillar of cloud and during the day and fire at night. Ashley's come to say hello. Say hello.
Hello.
Brilliant. It's Ashley's turn today. Verses 20 and 22 we see how God was directing the Israelites during the day with a pillar of cloud and at night with a pillar of fire. That was just consistently there. It never went away. And that just speaks to me so much of how God makes his guidance so clear all the time. And we serve an unchanging God. So the way that God guided people then is the same way that he guides us today. And so we need just to keep looking out for God's guidance. On into chapter 14, and we start to see a new side, if you like, of the Israelites. Even though these guys have just been rescued from slavery and they'd been given different rituals and ways and means to help them to remember what God has done. When things start to look like they can get tough, the Israelites start to panic and forget what God has done. They start to complain and grumble and end up saying that instead of dying in the desert, they would rather be a slave in Egypt. They completely lose the faith in the God that has just been doing amazing things to help them and to rescue them. But then we see that God saves them again and they're happy and they're singing. They start writing these songs about horses and men drowning, which is charming. But then, by chapter 15, they're at it again. They're complaining that they haven't got anything to drink. God gives them something to drink, so then they move on and complain that there's nothing to eat, and on and on and on. And I think basically these guys have just got trust issues. Then we see God provides them with food, but tells them not to take any more than they need for the day. There's a lesson coming here in learning just to trust God for his provision and for who he is. And true enough, food is provided each and every day to meet their needs. Some of the guys we see don't listen and they try to provide for themselves by stocking up, but it doesn't work. The food just goes off overnight and fills up with maggots, which is pretty disgusting. On into Matthew, and firstly we see the Sadducees start to question Jesus. Now the Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection. They thought that once you're dead, that's it. Whereas the Pharisees, their kind of enemies, if you like, believed in life after death. And so the Sadducees trying to use a bit of a ridiculous and hypothetical situation, which I think is practically impossible, to show that the idea of the resurrection was impossible. They didn't do a very good job of it. Jesus turned around and just quite bluntly said to them that they were wrong, that they didn't know Scripture. They prided themselves in knowing the Torah, and yet the only books of Scripture they accepted were the Pentateuch, the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They rejected all the other books of Scripture, and so they missed out on teaching about the resurrection that you find in, say, the prophets like Isaiah. And Jesus said that they didn't know about the power of God to raise people from the dead. And then Jesus goes on to explain that after death there is no such thing as marriage. In heaven, he says that all of us become like angels, and so the love that here on earth is unique to husband and wife. In heaven, it's universal, it's everywhere, and everybody shares it. And so Jesus, he stumps the Sadducees, and so the Pharisees come and have a go, and so they come and ask Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? Thinking that if they can get him to say that one commandment is more important than the others, and so there's other commandments that are less important, they can catch him out as being kind of unorthodox. But Jesus gives the right answer, that the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind and strength. And then he says that the second greatest commandment, just like it, is to love your neighbour as yourself, and that every other law and commandment and all the prophets, everything else, hangs on those two commandments. And so in saying that, he's showing himself to the Pharisees that he's orthodox, he's a proper Jew, if you like. But at the same time, he's showing the Pharisees up, because the Pharisees would have known that answer. And yet it's their commandments that are impossible to keep by ourselves. Once again, Jesus is bringing it straight back to the fact that we can't do anything by ourselves. We need the grace of God. And so the Pharisees are missing out. These guys are strong on ethics, but they're weak on relationships. Go on into chapter 3, and in a nutshell what Jesus is doing is just warning against more dead religion, and there's some strong words in there for the Pharisees. Friends, enjoy your day, and I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.